Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another video for my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm going to be using the Little Love Tags stamp set from Concord and Ninth, and I'm going to be doing two cards using multiple colors of ink. I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can do multicolor stamping. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm kind of getting an idea of exactly how I want this design to go. This greeting I have placed on my cardstock here will be stamped later, but I wanted to get sort of a size comparison for the area around that greeting so that I can stamp blocks of color using these four inks and then put that greeting on top. So I'm going to start with Twirling Tutu from Simon Says Stamp, which is the very lightest pink, and I'm going to stamp this one near the top of the card, making sure I get a really nice solid image. So as I stamp these four colors, they're going to overlap. So the colors I'm going to get, except for this very first one at the very top, are actually going to be a mixture of the two colors that are stamped on top of each other. So the final colors you see on the card aren't the pure colors from the ink pads, although they look very, very close. This next color that I'm using is called Teeny Bikini. I believe that's the one I'm using, and it's also from Simon Says Stamp. It's more of a corally pink. It's a little bit deeper in shade, and I'm just putting that right below the Twirling Tutu one, overlapping the two about halfway. So the third color I'm using is Hot Mama from Simon. This is a much more purple shade. It's kind of like an orchid purple pink shade. And this is where I'm transitioning into some more purple colors. So I'm going to stamp that one down. And then for the very final color, I'm using Grape Juice from Hero Arts. So the first three colors are from Simon and this last one is from Hero Arts. But the formulations of inks are very, very similar. This is that type of ink that as you stamp it, it looks a little splotchy, but when it dries, it evens out and gives you a nice even color. So now I've got the heart stamps from that stamp set. I'm going to stamp those off to each side of this column of color, and I'm using the Fossil ink pad from Simon Says Stamp. This is a nice neutral shade. I thought it would go well with the other colors that are on the card. I actually considered using Twirling Tutu or swapping it out for this Fossil color, and I ended up going with Fossil, and I'm glad I did. I think it needed like an earthy color to kind of ground it. So I stamped that twice, once on each side of that vertical block of color. And then I needed to test the area to make sure that it was ready for heat embossing. Now, heat embossing powder will stick to anything that has moisture or has ink on it, so I needed to make sure that this big block of color was completely dry. So I did a test run using that embossing powder, and thankfully it was dry enough. And I also prepped the area with an anti-static powder tool before stamping this greeting in Versamark ink. Versamark ink is a great ink for heat embossing because it's so sticky and it doesn't dry immediately. It gives you a little bit of time to apply the embossing powder. So I'm going to take some white embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. This is the color called Alabaster. It's just your basic white embossing powder. I'll sprinkle that on top over that greeting and then shake off the excess. I'm going to take my heat tool and heat set this heat embossing powder until it's smooth and melted. And then I'm going to trim down this piece so it's a little bit smaller than the front of a card. I just wanted to have a different color card base, and I wanted you to be able to see that color when looking at the front of the card instead of only when you open it. So I'm going to prep my card base. This is some Neenah Desert Storm cardstock, and I've just scored it at 4 1/4. And then I took a corner chomper tool and rounded all four corners and then adhered it to the front of the card using some foam tape. So this is going to finish up the first card that I'm showing you guys today. I'm going to go right into the second card, starting out by cutting some Neenah Solar White cardstock to be 3 by 3 inches. By the way, that first card, I used the same color of cardstock. So I'm going to use the striped heart stamp that's in the stamp set, and I'm going to put it right in the center of this square piece of cardstock. I'm going to be doing a bunch of rainbow stamping, and it's almost like it creates a gradient or a transition of color between all four of these different ink pads. So you're going to need some paper towel on hand to do this. And I'm starting out with Twirling Tutu, which is that lightest pink shade. It's the first shade that I used in the last card as well. I'm inking up just one corner of this heart, and then I'm taking my paper towel and dabbing off some of that color as it comes into the center of the heart. This is going to create a transition into the other color that I'm going to use next. So I'm going to use the corner of my MISTI tool a lot during this. I'm just going to make sure it's snug right in that corner as I work on each of these. I applied the next color and then took my paper towel and dabbed off along the top and bottom of that stripe of ink. And that's going to transition from that first color I stamped and allow me to transition to the next color that I'm going to stamp now. I'm using Hot Mama, just like I did before, and I'll ink up the other side of the stamp, just the other half, and then I'll take my paper towel and dab off both edges. So I'm going to dab off the top edge of that stripe of ink that I've just added to my stamp, and also along the bottom edge. I just want this diagonal area going across that has the color Hot Mama. So that final shade I'm going to use is Grape Juice, and I'll just ink up that side of the heart there and make sure it's nice and juicy. And then I'll take my paper towel for the last time and dab off quite a bit of that color. I want to get rid of a lot of that so that there's still a transition of color. So I'll stamp that down. And then I'm going to be done with all of the multicolor stamping for this card. So I'm going to use some black cardstock to create a greeting area. So this is some Licorice Twist cardstock from Bazzill, and I'm prepping that area with an anti-static powder tool because I'm going to heat emboss this greeting. So the stamp set has little itty bitty greetings, and this one says Friends Forever. I thought it'd be kind of fun to create a Valentine's Day card that's not necessarily for like a spouse or a significant other. This one is for a friend. I thought that'd be kind of fun. So I stamped that in Versamark ink, applied some of that same white embossing powder from Burtis Monroe, and then heat set it until it was smooth and melted. I trimmed the greeting down so it was a little bit smaller, and then I started to assemble my card. I'm going to create a card base that's the same color as my previous card. So I'm using some Neenah Desert Storm environmental cardstock, and I just scored that at 4 1/4 to create a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 square card. Put some foam adhesive behind my stamped heart piece, and then press that down onto the front of the card. I'm going to put a little bit of foam tape behind that Friends Forever greeting as well, and then I'm going to put that right over the top of the heart, kind of off to the right side. To finish off this card and give it a little bit more detail, I guess you'd say, I'm taking a T-square ruler and a 0.3 black marker and adding a dashed border around the outside of the white area. That's just going to finish off that just perfectly. So those are my 2 cards for today. Hope you guys enjoyed these ideas for what to do with multiple colors of ink. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys in another video very soon.